This is George Dionne of the Rock is George podcast, and this is a KNAC.com exclusive interview with frontman Dario Lorina of the hard rock act Dark Chapel. If I knew absolutely nothing about Dark Chapel, how would you describe the band's music to me?
So it's guitar driven. My roots are like 70s, 80s guitar playing. So that's like the core of it. I play in Black Label Society, so it has a lot of that vein in there. I love music of all styles, from like old jazz and blues to 70s, 80s rock and metal, which is my core. I love the 90s. I love everything up until everything in between. So, you know, it's kind of like Alice in Chains, Van Halen, Black Label kind of thing, all in one, but with a modern feel on it.
You put together this band, Dark Chapel, recently. You're going to be releasing your first album called Spirit in the Glass on September. Yeah. On February 28th through MNRK Heavy. You've been a solo artist in the past. You've been a band member of Black Label Society, as you said, and a couple other groups. What led to you putting together Dark Chapel now?
Yeah, so Dark Chapel's always been a vision for me, as far as like, you know, singing and playing guitar. In the past, I've done like instrumental albums, which was just focused on guitar playing. And when I recorded those albums, I was singing at that time, but you know, just in my songwriting and in my journey of singing and putting music together that I'm singing on, I just didn't feel like I was there yet. So for me, it's like a continuation of the music I'd be writing for instrumental guitar stuff, which is the same kind of music I would be writing that I'm into. Now I'm just putting my vocals and my lyrics on there.
Now, you said this was kind of a vision for a while. How long had you been working on the song material?
Yeah, so it's been several years, like in the creation process. So I started this as far as like when I was recording with the vision for this going to be for Dark Chapel was like several years ago. And some of those songs I had like that I had been working on. And then because I recorded half the album around that time, several years ago, which were like 4 songs maybe that are on this album now. And then last year, I completed the writing just as I was in between touring, and that was the rest of the 6 songs on there. So it's been a bit. It's been a bit of a time that I've had developing this.
On Spirit in the Glass, you're backed up by Brody DeRozzi on guitar, Mike Dunn on bass, Luis Silva on drums. How did you assemble your backing band? Yeah,
so these are just friends, guys that I've known in Vegas. That's where we're based. That's where I live. I'm from Boston, but I live out here in Vegas. So just guys I knew. And some of the album was recorded, like I was saying, several years ago. So those were with a couple of other friends of mine, phenomenal musicians. And but this is now the lineup.
When we first started speaking, I was thinking in my head, I'm going to ask him if he's from Boston, because that accent is very distinctive. I'm here in Plymouth, Massachusetts. I don't really have the accent. You got to go up north a little more to get that accent. But it was clear that I'm like, he's from this area.
Oh, did you say you're from Plymouth?
Yes.
Oh, wow. All right. Yeah. Carver is where I grew up. Crazy. What a small world.
2 miles from Carver Line.
Exactly. Crazy.
So, Spirit in the Glass, there's no songs called Spirit in the Glass on the album. What inspired the title?
So, yeah, when I was thinking of title for the album, just trying to think like, what am I gonna call the album? And there's there's a lyric on the song All That Remains, which is on the album, and it's the first lyric of the second verse, says Spirit in the Glass. And I just thought that would be cool because of the imagery that for me, when I read that line, I think of that line that it creates. And it brought about several different like images. But I think what ended up on the album cover is kind of like, you know, when I think Spirit in the Glass, you can get, you can kind of go in a few different directions. So that's where that came from.
Why don't we talk a little bit about the songs that you've released so far? Why don't you tell me what inspired the song Hollow Smile?
Yeah, so that started with the riff, and pretty much the music was written. And then kind of like I have a melody in mind. I'm kind of scatting a melody as I'm writing it, vocal wise. And then I was just building off of the first verse that I had written for lyrics. And then when the song was done, I read a quote that said like, the greatest battle a man will ever face is his own mind. And that was like, okay, for me, that's kind of what the meaning of the song is. And that kind of summed it up perfectly. So yeah, that's Hollow Smile.
Now, the song you have released from the album so far is Glass Heart. Why don't you tell me a little bit about that one?
Yeah, Glass Heart. So that was the first single. I guess most of the songs I have are always starting with music. So that was, had the riff and kind of went from there. And then, it's lyrically, it's stemming from like an emotion that's a real emotion, but then that emotion is kind of creating like an imagery. And then lyric wise, if the emotion was creating a painting, I'm writing describing that painting or what the world of that painting would be. So I was kind of thinking like Glass Heart is almost like if the moon was made of glass and you're inside of a glass moon and you're looking down on this world of these things that are happening. So that's kind of where I was at with Glass Heart.
Speaking of emotion, the ballad on the album, I really like that. Dead Weight, really powerful song. I like the piano, everything about it, the little darkness to it. Why don't you tell me a little bit about that one?
Yeah, Dead Weight is definitely one of the most personal songs on the album for me. It's one of my favorites because it's so different. Of course, the whole album's like bookended by like guitar-driven, heavy music, and then this is right in the middle, and it's something completely different. And I love that it's just piano and vocal. That's just this intimate feel. And I recorded it on a real baby grand at this awesome place here in Vegas. I wrote it on a cool baby grand that I have here that doesn't really hold a tune too well. So it sounds cool when you're sitting there because it has like this haunting vibe to it. But then when you actually press record, it's like, no, we can't use that. So I had to find a baby grand that'd stay in tune. But no, that song is I had that song for a while, and I'm glad it made it on this album because I'm psyched about it. But it's just, yeah, it's a very personal, emotional song, and you can interpret it in a lot of different ways as far as what it might mean to you.
As a guitar player, and obviously someone that plays the piano and the keyboards and stuff like that, was there any nerves kind of putting yourself out there as a vocalist with this album?
I wasn't really nervous. I'm a guitar player. That's what I feel like. Oh, I play guitar. And then just over the years of, I started taking vocal lessons I used to play with Jani when I was a teenager. And then I met a vocal coach that he worked with when he was a teenager or early on in his 20s, Ron Feldman, and he's since passed away. But he was awesome. And after a show, somewhere in Florida, brought me to I was in my hotel room, and he's like, I want to give you a vocal lesson. So showing me how to sing and kind of, because Jani would always joke with me, like, you gotta learn to play slide guitar, you gotta learn how to sing. But I was like 16, 17 years old at the time, and guitar is all I was focused on. So over the years, just like developing singing and just demoing and working on songs and writing, and in bands since Jani, I had always sang harmony background, and that was, that's still part of development. So I had a lot of demos that I had recorded where I was singing on. So I was psyched to actually be able to put all this together and then put it out. But for me, I just think of myself as a guitar player, and hopefully the rest falls into place. But piano, I just like to create on the piano, and so I'm psyched how it all came out, though.
Spirit in the Glass is being released through MNRK Heavy. I was going to ask you how you signed with the label, but Black Label Society's on there, so I imagine that connection helped seal the deal.
Yeah, definitely. Keep it all in the family. But yeah, MNRK's awesome, and I'm psyched to be there.
the Monarch has created some pretty cool vinyl editions of your album, as well as, you know, the standard CD and streaming. Was it important for you to have this album on vinyl? You mentioned you like kind of the earlier stuff, the as far as music, which always came out on vinyl.
Yeah, definitely. It's cool to have a physical feel to the music, especially on vinyl, because it's a whole different vibe. And I, as far as my own solo music or bands outside of the bands that I've been playing with, I've never had vinyl of my own. So I'm psyched to have that. The instrumental stuff I did was on CD and then digital. So it's awesome to hold like an actual vinyl, and it's cool because it's the first time that I'm singing on a whole album and it's on vinyl. So that's amazing. Yeah, and the variants came out awesome. And then it's on CD and it's going to be digital as well. So we have it all on there.
Now, you mentioned the album cover before, kind of briefly in relation to the album's title. I feel there's a lot going in on this album cover, right?
Yeah, like if, when I kind of wrote my idea out to the artist that I had design it, we pretty much nailed it. As far as like the atmosphere that, like, if you're looking at the cover as the music's playing, this is like the world that you could imagine you're in. And I love the amulet on the front, that's kind of magnifying the sky, which is like you're seeing the spirit through the magnification of the center of the amulet. And yeah, I love it. I think it came out great.
Now, I saw that the band had an opening slot for Zach Sabbath on January 14th to 15th. Obviously, Zach Wild's Black Sabbath tribute act. Was this the first time the band played a show together?
Yeah, those were the first two shows as a band, as Dark Chapel. And it was awesome getting to do that, opening up for Zach, which was, that was amazing. So we had a blast. The shows went great. It was very cool to, because I've had these songs for a while. We were recording these songs. We were jamming on them before we were recording them. And then, spend a lot of time as you're recording them and mixing them. And then you're finally gets to the final package. So after jamming on these songs and hearing these songs so many times, it was awesome to get to play them live. And yeah, I'm looking forward to a lot more. We have our album release show on March 1st in Vegas at Vamped. So yeah, we're going to be playing the album in full and some other things going on. So yeah, looking forward to it all.
Awesome. Do you have any future live performances planned beyond the Vamp show?
So we are working on all that now, and we definitely plan to be on the road. Dark Chapel's just getting started, so we're definitely looking forward to all to come.
You've been a member of Black Label Society since around 2014. How did you end up getting the gig with them?
Yeah, so I knew Blasco, who manages Black Label Society, played bass with Zach and Ozzy, and I had released my first instrumental album with Shrapnel Records. It was around that time, so that was like 2013, and I was playing with Lizzy Borden. I'd been touring with Lizzy for about 4 years at that time, and I was going back and forth with Blasco about my instrumental album that was coming out, and then it was right around the time that Black Label was going to be looking for another guitar player, or was looking for one at the time, and it was just kind of like timing, how everything kind of worked out as far as timing. And then, of course, me as a guitar player coming up, Zach was one of my guys, as a huge inspiration. So that was like, of course, extremely exciting to me for that opportunity to be there. So he had me record some videos of me playing Black Label songs, and I did a handful of those, and I also recorded a few videos, like sitting, singing, and playing acoustic on some of Zach's first Book of Shadows songs that he had. And then I sent those videos off, and this was like right at the end of 2013. And I think it was like just right at the end of December. They're like, yeah, we'd love to have you come out to LA and meet up with Zach. And I met him, and yeah, that was that. And then pretty much like January 1st, I think 2014 was the announcement. So yeah, no, it's been, I think almost, about 11 years or so. So it's been an amazing ride.
Are there any plans for live performances with Black Label or new music from the band this year?
Yeah, Black Label's working on new music, and we have a show at the Milwaukee Metal Fest in May, um, which will be a great time. There's a lot of awesome bands on there, and possibly Zach's Berserkers Festival, which we did last year, which will be happening again this year, sometime in the summer. So yeah.
You mentioned earlier that when you were 16, you were the guitarist for Jani Lane's band. Um, I wanted to know how you scored that gig as such a young guy and what your relationship with Jani was like working for him.
Yeah. So I started playing guitar when I was young, like 6 or 7, and music was my life. So when I was in like middle school, that's all I did was play guitar. Wake up, like in the summers, is wake up, walk across the hall, play guitar, go to bed. Wake up, walk across the hall. My dad would be like, "You got to come down and eat dinner." Go down and eat dinner, play guitar, go to bed. That's like all I did. So like, if kids in school are like, "Oh, I'm going to be a doctor, I'm going to play football or whatever," I was just thinking I'm going to play guitar. That's just what I thought in my head. And as a guitar player, I loved all that 70s and 80s guitar playing. MySpace was big at the time, and I saw a post on the bulletin board that Jani was looking for a guitar player for his solo band. And I was 16, and I just sent a bunch of emails to this contact that was in the post, and then they got back to me, and I think I sent like a good handful of emails, so they were like at the top of the inbox. But they got back to me, and kind of same, thing that they were like wanted me to record some songs. So I recorded some Warrant songs, and I panned my guitar one way and the Warrant song on the other side, and I sent it off to them. It was like a handful of songs, and they got back to me, and they were like, "Come out and maybe you can jam with Jani." So I met him at a rehearsal room, and Jani was a phenomenal drummer. So he played drums and sang Warrant songs, and it was just him and I in this room jamming. And we sang. He was playing drums and singing like Uncle Tom's Cabin and a lot of the Warrant hits. And yeah, and then that was pretty much that. A few weeks later or whatever, we were out there, and I toured with Jani for about maybe a little over 2 years. And I was definitely young. I was a kid. I was 16, so the guys in the band and Jani were definitely like my big brothers that took me under their wing. So when I look back on that, it was an amazing time. It was definitely an amazing experience. And yeah, time goes like that. So all of a sudden we're here, but when it feels like yesterday. So
Now, shortly after your time with Jani Lane was over, you played with Lizzy Borden in his live band. How did you get the gig with that? And was there kind of a big difference between working with someone like Jani Lane and working with someone that's kind of over the top like Lizzy Borden?
Yeah, I mean, just in performance wise, like show wise, it's a bit of a different thing, but the core of being a rock metal band is still the same. And Lizzy's such an amazing guy. But yeah, no, I had a mutual friend with the bass player of Lizzy Borden at the time, Martin Anderson, and they were looking for a guitar player, and they set us up, and I talked to Martin, and they were like, "Yeah, just come out, and we can jam at Lizzy's rehearsal space in Hollywood." And Lizzy had a lot of phenomenal guitar players over the years. So on all those recordings, those guys are ripping. So learning that stuff was definitely a challenge, and then extremely inspiring. So that was like, as far as the stuff that I was into guitar playing wise, like that was right in my wheelhouse. So I was psyched to be learning and jamming all that. And yeah, jam with Lizzy, and all the guys, and we, everything went great. And a few weeks later, we did, the first show was Keep It True Festival in Germany. And, yeah, was with Lizzy for about 4 years after that. So that was awesome.
Did you ever have the opportunity to record any demo music with Jani Lane or Lizzy Borden?
With Lizzy, we never really recorded anything for an album, but we did some covers that were recorded. And with Jani, never recorded, but we wrote together. I just remember this memory of one time, like in his house, and I was jamming on something on the acoustic, and he grabbed his guitar. We were kind of sitting down and jamming together, and I had this thing that I was playing, like this melody, and he kind of was like, oh, that, he was elaborating on it, and he was just pointing to this part, saying like, that's what writing's about, just like the melody piece that was behind this chord progression that he was kind of working with. So that was awesome, just like as a learning experience. But yeah, we never recorded together with Jani.
Now, you started your pro career at age 16. Did you ever have the opportunity to be in a local band here in Massachusetts?
Other than with my friends as a kid jamming in the basement, nothing. Yeah, nothing in Boston.
You signed with Mike Varney's Shrapnel label, as you mentioned earlier, for 2 solo albums. More of a shred label, known as a shred label. Was there a particular reason you didn't continue on making solo stuff?
Like as far as instrumental?
Yeah.
I was, at the time, like a lot of the guys that I have looked up to guitar playing wise were a part of Shrapnel. So I was psyched to do that. And I had known Mike for a little while, like as a teenager, as I was coming up in Vegas playing. And so I was psyched to do that. And as a guitar player, it's a really cool experience to build like instrumental music. But I knew that, I did those too, but at the same time, I was working on my singing and demoing and writing songs. So that just kind of was a natural evolution. But those 2 albums, I'm psyched about. And, when I put those on and hear those again, it brings back a lot of great memories because as a guitar player, it really is refining, like whatever chops you have going at the moment, it's really refining those because you're putting them into, even though it's instrumental, it's still songwriting and guitar work. So yeah, no, I loved that whole time.
So you got Black Label Society, you have Dark Chapel. Are you working on any other music projects?
Dark Chapel, it's all Dark Chapel.
Well, before I let you go, I wanted to know where you got the name of the band from.
So when I was looking for places in Vegas, I had a few places you're looking at the same time, and there was this one place that was painted very dark, and it was just called, like, nicknamed. We were like, oh, it's, the Dark Chapel. And then the Dark Chapel became the name of my studio, and then it just kind of rolled over into Dark Chapel becoming the name of the band, which I feel is very fitting, and I think it fits the music well. And Dark Chapel.
Well, those are all the questions I have for you today, Dario. The new Dark Chapel album comes out February 28th, Spirit in the Glass on MNRK Heavy. Fantastic album. I wish you the best of luck with it, and I want to thank you for talking to me today about it.
Thank you, man. I appreciate you having me. I'm psyched for everybody to hear the whole thing. And thanks for having me.